The stars burned wrong that night across the Zephyrian home system. Commander Veltar watched from the bridge of his dying ship as the crystalline monsters tore through his fleet, like glass through water. The Kethvar Empire had come to his world with 300 vessels of pure destruction, and his people had nothing left to stop them. His hands shook as he reached for the communications panel. The distress beacon would go out across the galaxy in every language his computers knew. Someone had to hear it. Someone had to care that an entire civilization was dying. All ships, all worlds, all beings who can hear this message. Veltar spoke into the transmitter as his ship rocked from another hit. The Kethvar Empire attacks Zephyr Prime. We are a peaceful people. We have done nothing wrong. They kill our children. They burn our cities. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. The message shot out through hyperspace at faster than light speed. It reached the Andromedans first, but they deleted it without reading past the word Kethvar. The Talkari received it next, and their bird-like leaders simply closed the channel. No one fought the Kethvar Empire. No one had fought them for 3,000 years. The crystalline beings who called themselves the Kethvar had ruled most of the galaxy since before any current civilization could remember. They were tall as trees and hard as diamonds. Their ships looked like moving crystals that could slice through metal and energy shields like they were made of paper. When they wanted a world, they took it. When they wanted a species gone, that species disappeared. Veltar's ship exploded around him, but his escape pod managed to launch. As he fell toward his burning homeworld, he watched the Kethvar destroyers hunt down every refugee ship that tried to flee. The monsters were not just conquering Zephyr Prime. They were ending it completely, far across the galaxy. In a small yellow star system that most civilizations had never heard of, a human ship called the UES Discovery picked up the signal. Captain Lisa Martinez was drinking coffee on the bridge when her communications officer, Ryan Clark, turned from his station with a confused look. "Captain, we're getting some kind of distress call," Ryan said. "It's coming from way outside our sector. The translator is having trouble with parts of it, but it sounds bad." Lisa set down her coffee and walked over to Ryan's station. She was a small woman with dark hair and serious eyes who had spent most of her career exploring empty space for the Earth government. Humanity had only been traveling between stars for about 10 years, and most of their missions involved looking at rocks and gas clouds. "Put it through the speakers," she ordered, the bridge filled with Veltar's desperate voice speaking broken galactic standard. The words were hard to understand, but the fear and pain came through clearly. Lisa felt her stomach twist as she listened to descriptions of burning cities and murdered civilians. "Where is this coming from?" she asked. Navigator Pete Johnson checked his instruments. Pete was a tall man with red hair who could plot courses through space better than anyone in the fleet. "About 40 light years from here, Captain. That's the Zephyr system. Never been there, but our charts show it has 7 planets and about 3 billion inhabitants." Engineer Katie Bell looked up from her station. Katie was young and smart and could fix anything that broke on the ship. "Captain, our computers are showing massive energy signatures in that system. Whatever's happening there, it's big." Lisa listened to the message again. The alien's voice cracked with emotion as he begged for help. She had never heard anything so desperate in her life. "Ryan, are we getting any response to this signal from other ships or worlds?" Ryan worked his controls for a few minutes. "Nothing, Captain. The signal is going everywhere, but nobody is answering. It's like the whole galaxy is ignoring this." Lisa walked to the front of the bridge and stared out at the stars. She thought about her daughter back on Earth and wondered what she would want someone to do if Earth was being attacked. The choice seemed simple, but she knew it was anything but. "Captain," Pete said quietly, "we're just one ship. Our orders are to survey the nebula in this sector and report back to Earth. We're not equipped for military action." "Pete's right," Katie added. "We've got some defensive weapons, but nothing compared to what military ships carry. If something big enough to threaten 3 billion people is happening over there, what could we possibly do about it?" Lisa knew they were right. The Discovery was an exploration vessel with a crew of 43 people. They had laser cannons for clearing space debris and basic shields for radiation protection. Against whatever was destroying the Zephyr system, they would last about 5 seconds. But she kept thinking about the alien's voice. The way he said please, the way he talked about children dying. "Ryan, send a message back to Earth Command," she decided. "Tell them we received a distress call from the Zephyr system and request orders. That will take 6 hours for the signal to reach Earth, and 6 hours for a response." Ryan pointed out, "I know." Lisa looked at the stars again. By the time they heard back from Earth, whatever was happening in the Zephyr system would be over. The alien had sounded like he was already dying when he sent the message. The bridge was quiet for several minutes. Finally, Pete spoke up. "Captain, there is another option. We could go take a look, just observe from a safe distance and see what's actually happening. Maybe gather some intelligence that could help someone else respond." Katie nodded. "Our sensors are pretty good. We could stay far enough away to avoid detection, but close enough to see what's going on." Lisa considered this. It was still dangerous, but not as crazy as actually trying to help. "How long to reach the Zephyr system?" "At maximum speed, about 8 hours, Pete answered. "Do it." Lisa made the decision before she could change her mind. "Plot a course for the Zephyr system, maximum speed, but keep us ready to jump away at the first sign of trouble." As the Discovery turned toward the distant system, Lisa wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her career. Humanity had only recently learned they were not alone in the universe. Most other species seemed to think humans were primitive and ignorant. Earth had tried to join something called the Galactic Council 5 years ago, but had been rejected without even a meeting. Maybe the smart thing was to stay out of galactic politics and alien wars. Maybe her job was to keep her crew safe and follow orders from Earth Command. But as they jumped into hyperspace toward the Zephyr system, Lisa could not stop thinking about children dying while the galaxy looked the other way. Sometimes the smart thing and the right thing were not the same thing, and sometimes someone had to be the first to do something impossible. The UES Discovery dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyr system and immediately went silent running. Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge staring at her screens in horror. The third planet was on fire. "My God," whispered Ryan Clark from his communications station. "Captain, I'm picking up hundreds of ships fleeing the inner system. Most of them are civilian transports." Through the main viewer, Lisa could see the crystalline ships of the Kethvar Empire. They moved like living diamonds through space, each one the size of a city block. Their weapons fired beams of pure energy that cut through the fleeing refugee ships like they were made of paper. "How many Kethvar vessels?" Lisa asked. Navigator Pete Johnson worked his sensors. "I count 67 destroyers and 12 of what look like command ships." "Captain, those things are huge. Each destroyer is at least 3 times our size." Engineer Katie Bell looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Their energy output is off the charts. A single one of those ships could probably destroy our entire fleet back home." Lisa watched a Kethvar destroyer catch up to a refugee transport. The crystalline ship fired once and the transport simply disappeared in a flash of light. She felt sick knowing that hundreds or maybe thousands of innocent people had just died. "Captain," Ryan said urgently, "I'm getting a transmission from one of the refugee ships. It's that same alien who sent the distress call earlier." "Put him through." Commander Veltar's voice filled the bridge. He sounded exhausted and desperate. "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet. You must leave this system immediately. The Kethvar Empire shows no mercy to those who interfere." Lisa activated the communications panel. "Commander Veltar, this is Captain Martinez of the Earth vessel Discovery. We received your distress call." There was a long pause. "Earth? I do not know this world." "Please, Captain Martinez, you cannot help us. The Kethvar have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. No one fights them and survives." "How many people are on those refugee ships?" Lisa asked. "Perhaps 50,000, Veltar replied. "All that remains of 3 billion souls. Captain, you must understand. The Kethvar will destroy anyone who aids us. Your world could suffer the same fate as mine." Lisa looked around her bridge. Pete was shaking his head slightly, clearly thinking this was insane. Katie looked scared but determined. Ryan was already working on something at his station. "Commander, transmit the locations of your refugee ships to us," Lisa ordered. "Captain, what are you doing?" Pete asked quietly. "The right thing." Lisa turned to Katie. "Can we extend our shields around one of those transports?" Katie worked her controls quickly. "Theoretically, yes, but it would drain our power fast and leave us defenseless." "Do it." Lisa moved to the captain's chair. "Pete, plot an intercept course for the nearest refugee ship. Ryan, send a message to the Kethvar fleet." "What should the message say?" Ryan asked. "Tell them to stop firing on civilian vessels immediately." The bridge was silent for a moment. Finally, Pete spoke. "Captain, with respect, they're going to laugh at us and then blow us to pieces." "Maybe," Lisa admitted. "But those are innocent people dying out there and no one else is helping them." The Discovery moved toward the nearest transport. a battered ship carrying Zephyrian families. As they approached, 3 HFY destroyers turned toward them. The crystalline ships were beautiful in a terrifying way, like moving sculptures made of deadly light. Incoming transmission from the HFY, Ryan reported. On screen, the viewer showed a creature that looked like it was carved from living crystal. General Mordak of the HFY Empire stood over 9 feet tall with faceted skin that reflected light in rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice sounded like breaking glass. Unknown vessel, you will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. I am General Mordak of the Imperial Fleet. No one interferes with HFY operations. Lisa stood and faced the screen. General Mordak, this is Captain Lisa Martinez of the United Earth Ship Discovery. You are firing on unarmed civilian vessels. Stop immediately. The crystalline being's face showed what might have been amusement. Earth? I have never heard of this world. You pilot a primitive vessel and dare to give orders to the HFY Empire? Surrender now and your death will be quick. No, Lisa said simply. General Mordak seemed genuinely surprised. No, you refuse to surrender? I refuse to watch you murder innocent people. Lisa nodded to Katie. Extend shields around that. Transport. The Discovery's defensive. Fields expanded to cover the Zephyrian refugee ship just as a HFY destroyer fired. The energy beam hit their shields and the whole ship shook violently. Shields down to 60%, Katie reported. I can't take many more hits like that. Evasive maneuvers, Lisa ordered. Pete, get us between the HFY and as many transports as you can. What happened next surprised everyone, including the HFY. The Discovery did not fight like other ships. Most galactic civilizations had developed honorable combat techniques over thousands of years. Ships faced each other directly and exchanged fire until one was destroyed. Humans had learned to fight very differently. Pete flew the Discovery through the refugee fleet like it was an obstacle course. He used the larger transports as cover and made turns that should have torn the ship apart. Katie rerouted power in ways that made the engines scream but gave them impossible speed bursts. The HFY destroyers were faster and more powerful, but they had never faced anything like this. Human tactics made no sense. The Discovery would fire at one ship, then immediately run away. It would hide behind asteroids and attack from unexpected angles. Most confusing of all, it seemed to ignore the rules of honorable combat completely. They fight like cowards. General Mordak growled as the small human ship somehow avoided destruction for the 10th time. But the Discovery was not running from fear. Every seemingly random move had a purpose. Every retreat saved another transport. Lisa was not trying to defeat the HFY fleet. She was trying to buy time for the refugees to escape. Captain, Ryan called out. Commander Veltar is hailing us again. Put him through. Captain Martinez, what are you doing? Your ship should have been destroyed by now. We're buying you time, Commander. Get your people to safety. But how? No one has ever fought the HFY and lived. Lisa smiled grimly as another energy beam missed them by inches. Maybe no one ever fought them the right way before. The battle continued for 2 hours. The Discovery took heavy damage but kept fighting. They saved 12 transports by drawing HFY fire and providing cover. But their luck could not last forever. A lucky shot from a destroyer punched through their port shield generator. The ship spun out of control and started venting atmosphere. Hull breach on deck 3, Katie reported. Shields failing, engines at 20%. Can we make it to hyperspace? Lisa asked. Pete checked his instruments. Just barely, but we'll have to leave the remaining transports. Lisa looked at the screen showing the last few refugee ships. Families were aboard those vessels, children who would die if the Discovery ran. Before she could decide, Commander Veltar's voice came through the speakers. Captain Martinez, you have done the impossible. You have given us hope. Now go before it is too late, Commander. Go, Captain. Some of my people live because of you. That is more than anyone has done in 1,000 years. With a heavy heart, Lisa gave the order. Pete, jump us out of here. As the Discovery entered hyperspace, Lisa sat in her damaged ship and thought about what they had just done. They had faced the most powerful empire in the galaxy and lived. More importantly, they had saved thousands of innocent lives. But she knew this was just the beginning. The HFY would not forget this insult. Earth was no longer unknown to the galaxy, and Lisa had a feeling that was going to change everything. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds in 1,000,000 cities, Beings gathered around communication screens to hear the impossible story. An unknown species called humans had fought the Kethavar Empire and lived. Most refused to believe it at first. The Andromedans called it propaganda. The Talkari dismissed it as fiction. But the evidence was undeniable. 67 Kethavar destroyers had failed to stop one small human vessel. 12 refugee transports had escaped because of that ship. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone had stood up to the crystalline tyrants and survived. On Earth, President Helen Carter stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House. The walls were covered with screens showing everything they knew about the galaxy beyond their solar system. It was not much. How many ships do we have that can fight? She asked Admiral Jack Thompson. The old military commander looked tired. 23 vessels total, Madam President. Most are exploration ships like the Discovery. We have exactly 4 ships that were built for combat, and they're all smaller than that Kethavar destroyer Captain Martinez described. Dr. Susan Green from the Science Council shook her head. We should be negotiating, not preparing for war. Maybe we can explain to the Kethavar that Captain Martinez acted without orders. We could offer them some kind of compensation. Compensation for what? President Carter asked. For saving innocent lives? For interfering with their military operation, Dr. Green replied. We don't understand galactic law or politics. This could all be a misunderstanding. Admiral Thompson slammed his hand on the table. There's no misunderstanding about killing 3 billion civilians, Doctor. These Kethavar are monsters, and now they know where we live. The debate had been going on for hours. Earth's leaders were split between those who wanted to fight and those who wanted to negotiate. But President Carter kept thinking about the recordings from Captain Martinez. The way the alien commander had begged for help. The way his voice broke when he talked about children dying. How long before the Kethavar can reach Earth? She asked. 6 months, assuming they send a fleet immediately. Admiral Thompson answered. But Madam President, we can't fight an empire that controls half the galaxy with 23 ships. Then we build more ships. Dr. Green looked shocked. Build more ships? We don't have the industrial capacity to. We built 2,000 naval vessels during World War II, President Carter interrupted. We put a man on the moon in less than a decade. We ended global warming in 20 years once we decided to do it. Don't tell me we can't build spaceships. Admiral Thompson leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Madam President? I'm suggesting we do what humans do best when someone threatens our family. President Carter's voice was cold and determined. We wake up. Within a week, every major shipyard on Earth had been converted to military production. The orbital construction facilities around Luna worked around the clock. Mars Colony sent their entire mineral output to the war effort. Humanity had not built for war in 50 years, but they remembered how. Meanwhile, Commander Veltar sat in a hidden base on a dead asteroid, watching the humans with amazement. He had managed to save 300,000 of his people, scattered across a dozen refugee ships hiding in the outer reaches of space. They were all that remained of the Zephyrian civilization. Commander, his communications officer, reported, "We're receiving another transmission from the humans." Put it through. Captain Martinez appeared on the screen. Her ship was in a repair dock orbiting Earth, but she looked different now. Harder, more focused. Commander Veltar, this is Captain Martinez. I want to thank you for the information you've been sending us about Kethavar technology and tactics. It is the least I can do, Captain. Your people saved my refugees when no one else would help. But I must warn you again. The Empire will send a massive fleet to destroy your world. You should evacuate Earth while you still can. Lisa shook her head. We're not running, Commander. We're going to fight. Veltar felt a mixture of admiration and sadness. Captain, my people studied warfare for 1,000 years before the Kethavar came. We had the most advanced weapons in our sector. It made no difference. They destroyed us in 3 days. How many ships did you have? Lisa asked. 237 vessels of various sizes. How many ships will the Kethavar send to Earth? Based on intelligence from other refugees, probably 300 ships. Maybe more if they want to make an example of your world. Lisa smiled in a way that made Veltar nervous. Perfect. That means we know exactly how many ships we need to kill. Over the next few months, Earth transformed in ways that shocked the galaxy. Every nation contributed to the war effort without complaint. Old enemies worked together. Resources were shared freely. The entire planet focused on a single goal: survival. The shipyards produced vessels at an impossible rate. The basic human cruiser was smaller than a HFY destroyer, but carried more weapons and had better armor. Human fighters were tiny compared to HFY craft, but were faster and more maneuverable. Most importantly, human ships were designed by people who understood war. Every vessel could fight damaged. Every weapon system had backups. Every defense could be repaired in battle. Dr. Susan Green had initially opposed the military buildup, but she found herself leading the technology development program. Working with Zephyrian refugees, human scientists made breakthrough after breakthrough. They learned to enhance their shields with crystalline matrices. They developed new alloys that could withstand energy weapons. They created targeting systems that could predict enemy movement. The humans learned so fast, Veltar told his officers. My people took centuries to develop our healing arts. These humans master new technology in weeks. His science officer, a young Zephyrian named Colwyn, nodded in agreement. They approach problems differently than we do, Commander. We seek perfection and beauty in our solutions. They seek effectiveness. Look at their ships, another officer added. They are not elegant like ours were. They are brutal and functional. Built only to destroy the enemy. Veltar watched the human fleet grow through their long-range sensors. 200 ships became 400. 400 became 600. The humans were not just building a fleet. They were building an armada, but numbers alone would not be enough. The HFY had conquered species with larger fleets than this. What made Veltar hopeful was something else he saw in the humans. They were angry. Every human he spoke with had the same cold fury in their eyes. The HFY had made a mistake when they chose to threaten Earth. They had awakened something that had been sleeping for 50 years. Commander, his communications officer called. We're detecting a massive hyperspace disturbance approaching the Sol system. Veltar felt his heart sink. How many ships? 312 vessels, sir. It's the invasion fleet. Veltar opened a channel to Captain Martinez immediately. Captain, they're coming. 300 ships just entered your outer system. Lisa's image appeared calm and ready. Thank you for the warning, Commander. Don't worry, we're prepared. Captain, I wish there was more we could do to help. You've done enough, Commander. You gave us hope when no one else would. Now watch what humans do with hope. As the transmission ended, Veltar wondered if he was about to witness the birth of a legend or the death of the first species brave enough to stand against the HFY Empire. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same again. General Mordak led the HFY invasion fleet toward the small yellow star that housed the human homeworld. 312 ships of crystalline death moved through space like a living constellation. The general expected this to be simple. One primitive world against the might of an empire that had ruled for millennia. He was about to learn that humans were very good at proving expectations wrong. General, his sensor officer reported, we are detecting unusual activity throughout the human system. Explain. The asteroid belt shows massive energy signatures. The gas giants have artificial structures we cannot identify. There appear to be weapon platforms hidden throughout the system. Mordak studied the tactical display with growing confusion. Most species built their defenses around their homeworld. The humans seem to have turned their entire solar system into a fortress. How many human ships are we detecting? 837 vessels, General. Much larger than our intelligence predicted. For the first time in his long military career, General Mordak felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Doubt. The humans had somehow built a fleet nearly 3 times the size of his invasion force in just 6 months. That should have been impossible. Admiral Jack Thompson stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's first true battleship. Around him, the largest fleet in human history waited for orders. Earth hung below them like a blue jewel, peaceful and beautiful. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, the HFY fleet is approaching the outer system. They'll reach Pluto's orbit in 2 hours. Signal all ships, Thompson ordered. Execute battle plan Hornet's Nest. Across the solar system, human vessels began to move. They did not form traditional battle lines or attempt honorable ship-to-ship combat. Instead, they scattered like leaves in a storm, taking positions behind asteroids, inside gas giant rings, and around the moons of distant planets. The HFY fleet entered the system expecting to fight a conventional battle. What they found was something no military academy in the galaxy had prepared them for. The first attack came from the asteroid belt. Chunks of rock that had been fitted with engines and warheads suddenly came to life. accelerating toward the Kethvar ships at tremendous speed. The crystalline vessels destroyed dozens of them, but hundreds more kept coming. Suicide attacks? General Mordak asked in disbelief. They're using unmanned projectiles as weapons? Before his tactical officer could respond, the real attack began. Human ships appeared from behind every piece of cover in the system. They struck fast, fired everything they had, then disappeared again before the Kethvar could respond effectively. Captain Lisa Martinez, now commanding the carrier UES Liberty, led a squadron of fighters in an impossible maneuver. They skimmed the edge of Jupiter's atmosphere, using the planet's gravity to slingshot themselves at incredible speed toward a group of Kethvar destroyers. "This is Viper Leader," came the voice of pilot Jake Mitchell over the communications channel. "Beginning attack run on target Group Alpha." Jake's fighter screamed through space at speeds that should have killed him. Behind him, 23 other human pilots followed in perfect formation. They dove toward the Kethvar ships like hawks attacking prey. The crystalline beings had never seen anything like human fighter tactics. Most civilized species used large, heavily armored craft that could survive multiple hits. Human fighters were tiny, fast, and completely insane. Jake's squadron hit the Kethvar destroyers and scattered in all directions before the enemy could lock onto them. 3 destroyers exploded from the coordinated attack. The humans had learned that Kethvar shields were designed to stop large energy bursts, not dozens of small, precise strikes. "Impossible," General Mordak growled. "How are they moving so fast?" His answer came when human Marines boarded one of his command ships. Colonel Amy Parker led the assault team through an airlock they had blasted open with shaped charges. The Kethvar had never experienced boarding actions because most species considered them too dangerous and uncivilized. Humans, apparently, did not care about civilized. Colonel Parker's Marines moved through the crystalline ship like a force of nature. They carried weapons designed specifically to crack crystal, and wore armor that could absorb energy attacks. The Kethvar crew found themselves fighting in close combat for the first time in their military careers. It went very badly for them. Colonel Parker to Admiral Thompson. Amy's voice came through the communication system. "Kethvar command ship secured. Their computers are like crystal libraries. We're downloading everything." The battle turned into something the galaxy had never witnessed. The Kethvar were used to enemies who fought with honor, who followed predictable patterns, who respected the traditional rules of warfare. Humans followed no rules except victory. They used the solar wind as a weapon, channeling charged particles to overload Kethvar shields. They turned asteroids into guided missiles. They hid ships inside the radiation belt of Jupiter and used it to mask their energy signatures. Most shocking of all, they used psychology as a weapon. Dr. Susan Green had spent months studying Kethvar communications and behavior patterns. She had discovered something crucial about the crystalline beings. They prized order and perfection above all else. Their entire society was based on geometric harmony and flawless structure. So the humans introduced chaos. Human ships began transmitting random data on all frequencies, creating communication static that interfered with Kethvar coordination. They released clouds of metallic particles that created false sensor readings. They used gravity generators to create spatial distortions that made accurate navigation impossible. The Kethvar fleet, which had conquered 1,000 worlds through superior technology and discipline, found itself fighting an enemy that turned their strengths into weaknesses. "General," his communications officer reported with panic in his crystalline voice, "we're losing coordination with the outer squadrons. The humans are jamming everything. Switch to backup frequencies." "We've tried, sir. They're jamming those too. And sir, they're somehow predicting our tactical responses. Every time we adapt, they're already countering our adaptation." General Mordak realized with growing horror that the humans were not just fighting them. They were studying them. Every Kethvar response was being analyzed and countered in real time. The final blow came when the humans revealed their most devastating innovation. Jake Mitchell's fighter squadron had been equipped with a new type of weapon, crystalline resonance bombs. Using technology provided by the Zephyrian refugees, they had created devices that could shatter the molecular structure of Kethvar armor. "This is Viper Leader," Jake reported as his squadron lined up for their final attack run, beginning resonance bombing of the command fleet. The bombs did not explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they sent harmonic frequencies through the crystalline ships that caused them to literally tear themselves apart. The perfect geometric structure that made Cathvar vessels so strong became their fatal weakness. 5 command ships, shattered like glass sculptures dropped on stone floors. General Mordock watched his fleet dissolve around him and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not fear of death, but fear of the implications. If humans could defeat the Cathvar, then the order that had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia was ending. General, his surviving tactical officer whispered, "What are your orders?" Mordock looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. Less than 100 ships remained functional out of over 300. The humans had not just defeated them, they had humiliated them. "Signal retreat," he ordered quietly. As the Cathvar survivors fled the Sol system, Admiral Thompson stood on his bridge and watched them go. Around him, his officers cheered and celebrated. They had done the impossible. They had defeated the most powerful empire in the galaxy. But Thompson was not celebrating. He was thinking about what came next. The Cathvar would not forget this defeat. They would return with larger fleets and deadlier weapons. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Emperor Zargoth of the Cathvar Empire stood in his crystal palace on the homeworld of Morthok and stared at the reports from the Sol system. For 3,000 years, no force in the galaxy had defeated a Cathvar fleet. Now these humans had destroyed 2/3 of General Mordock's invasion force and sent the survivors running like frightened children. The Emperor's crystalline form pulsed with colors that indicated deep anger. Around him, his advisors waited in terrified silence. No one wanted to be the first to speak. "How is this possible?" the Emperor finally asked, his voice like grinding stone. General Mordock, who had returned in disgrace, bowed low before the crystal throne. "Your Majesty, the humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They use tactics that defy all military logic. They turned their entire star system into a weapon. You had 300 ships against primitives who have barely learned to travel between stars. They are no longer primitives, Your Majesty. In 6 months, they built a fleet of over 800 vessels. Their technology advances faster than anything we have seen. And," Mordock paused, knowing his next words might cost him his life, "they are not afraid of us." The Emperor's glow shifted to darker colors. Fear had been the Cathvar Empire's greatest weapon for millennia. Species surrendered rather than face their fleets. Entire civilizations submitted without a fight because they knew resistance was hopeless. But the humans had fought back. More than that, they had won. "Your Majesty," his science advisor spoke carefully, "our intelligence networks report something disturbing. News of the human victory is spreading across the galaxy. 17 oppressed worlds have sent secret messages to Earth requesting aid. The Talkari resistance movement has begun open attacks on our outposts." Emperor Zargoth rose from his throne, his crystal body reflecting the lights of his palace like a prism of rage. "Then we will make an example that the galaxy will never forget. Authorize the use of planet-killer weapons against the human homeworld." The advisors exchanged shocked glances. Planet killers had been banned by galactic law for over 1,000 years. Even the Cathvar had never used them against inhabited worlds. "Your Majesty," the science advisor said nervously, "the use of such weapons would violate our own codes of warfare. It would turn every civilized species against us." "Civilized species are already turning against us because of these humans," the Emperor replied coldly. "If fear will not keep them in line, then complete destruction will." But Emperor Zargoth had made a critical error. He had underestimated how far human influence had already spread. Commander Veltar's refugee fleet had not been idle during the months since the Battle of Sol. They had carried word of human courage to every corner of the galaxy. The Andromedans, who had ignored the original distress call, now listened with interest to reports of Cathvar defeats. The Talkari, whose bird-like civilization had suffered under crystal rule for centuries, began to hope for the first time in generations. Most importantly, other species began to realize that the Cathvar Empire was not invincible. Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, humanity's newest and most advanced battleship, as it dropped out of hyperspace deep in Cathvar territory. Behind her, a fleet of 200 human vessels appeared like ghosts in the darkness between stars. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "we're detecting the planet-killer weapon approaching Sol. It should reach Earth in 72 hours. Lisa nodded grimly. The plan was insane, but it was also the only option they had. While the Emperor prepared to destroy Earth, humanity would strike at the heart of the HFY Empire itself. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. Today we end 3,000 years of tyranny. For Earth, for Zephyr, for every world that has suffered under crystal oppression." The human fleet moved toward Morthak like a spear aimed at the heart of darkness. They were joined by allies that would have been impossible to imagine months earlier. Commander Veltar led a squadron of rebuilt Zephyrian ships. The Talkari had contributed their knowledge of hyperspace navigation. Even some Andromedan vessels had quietly joined the assault. Emperor Zargoth detected the approaching fleet when it was still hours away from his homeworld. The crystalline being's confidence wavered as his sensors reported the impossible. Over 400 ships heading directly for Morthak. "How did they get so deep into our territory undetected?" he demanded. General Mordak studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. "Your Majesty, they're using techniques we've never seen before. They're masking their energy signatures somehow and moving through hyperspace in ways that shouldn't be possible." What the general did not understand was that humans had learned to think about warfare in 3 dimensions while other species thought in 2. The Talkari had shown them how to use hyperspace currents like ocean streams. The Zephyrians had taught them to bend spacetime around their ships. Humanity had taken these lessons and created something entirely new. The Battle of Morthak began with a sight that shocked the galaxy. Human ships appeared not around the planet but inside the crystal cities themselves. Using teleportation technology adapted from captured HFY equipment, they had bypassed the orbital defenses entirely. President Helen Carter's voice came through communication channels across the system. "Emperor Zargoth, this is President Carter of Earth. You have one chance to surrender unconditionally and withdraw from all conquered territories. Refuse, and we will do to your world what you plan to do to ours." The Emperor's response was to order his remaining fleets to attack immediately. What followed was not a battle, but a revolution. The humans did not try to conquer Morthak. Instead, they did something far more terrifying to the order-obsessed HFY. They changed it. Using terraforming technology adapted from their own colony-building efforts, human ships began altering the planet's crystalline structures. They introduced organic elements into the geometric perfection that defined HFY society. Curved lines appeared where only straight edges had existed. Random patterns emerged in place of mathematical precision. The psychological impact was devastating. HFY ground forces simply stopped fighting as they watched their perfect world become chaotic and unpredictable. Some began to weep, a sound like breaking glass that echoed through the crystal canyons. "Stop," Emperor Zargoth transmitted to the human fleet. "Please stop this destruction." President Carter's image appeared on screens throughout the HFY palace. "Will you withdraw from all conquered worlds?" "Yes." "Will you provide reparations to the species you have oppressed?" "Yes." "Will you submit to galactic justice for your crimes?" The Emperor looked around his changing world, where organic vines now grew through crystal spires and curved rivers flowed where geometric channels once carried pure water. The perfection that had defined his people for millennia was becoming beautifully, terrifyingly random. "Yes," he whispered. The war ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The HFY Empire surrendered completely. Their fleets recalled from conquered worlds. Their planet-killer weapons dismantled under human supervision. But the real victory was not military. It was the change in how the galaxy saw itself. Commander Veltar stood with Captain Martinez on the observation deck of the UES Horizon as they watched the first Galactic Justice Tribunal convene on Morthak. Representatives from dozens of species had come to bear witness to something unprecedented, the trial of an empire. "I never thought I would see this day," Veltar said quietly. "When I sent that distress call, I was simply hoping someone would remember that my people existed." Lisa smiled. "Your message did more than that, Commander. It woke up something that had been sleeping. What will happen now?" Veltar asked. "Now we build something better," Lisa replied. "A galaxy where no single empire can dominate through fear. Where species help each other instead of looking the other way when innocents die." As they watched, former HFY slaves began arriving on transport ships, returning to worlds they had not seen in generations. Children who had been born in crystal mines looked up at stars they had never seen. Freedom was not just a word anymore. It was a reality. The human victory had not been achieved through superior weapons or larger fleets. It had been won by something simpler and more powerful, the refusal to accept that evil was inevitable. They had heard the begging across the cosmos. They had awakened. And now the galaxy would never sleep in fear again. On Earth, Admiral Thompson stood in the same situation room where President Carter had made the decision to fight. The walls still showed tactical displays, but now they tracked humanitarian missions instead of battle fleets. "Admiral," his aide reported, "we have requests for assistance from 47 worlds. The Galactic Council has officially invited humanity to join as a founding member of the new Democratic Alliance." Thompson nodded. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Building a peaceful galaxy would be harder than destroying a tyrannical empire. But humans had learned something important during the long months of conflict. They were not alone anymore. Species that had once cowered in fear now stood together as allies. The begging had stopped because no one needed to beg when others were willing to help.